All right, so how you guys doing? I'm going to be walking you guys through a lot of the content we're going to be covering in Premiere Pro. We're going to start from like bare minimum, setting up a project, sort of the layout of Premiere Pro as well for this video, and general like importing and preparing your sequence or timeline. Cool. So I want to walk you guys all through that, but welcome to whatever this ends up being. I plan on making a lot of videos for sort of basic Premiere Pro use. I hope this helps. First thing we're going to do is we're going to open Premiere Pro. This could take a long time. This could take a short time, depending on if you haven't set up a profile or not. You'll notice that when I open it up, your screen may look a little different. You could have pictures or thumbnails, but you'll see some older projects. But if you're opening this up brand new, this will be blank, no worries. To create a project, what we're going to do is we're going to click New Project. So if we click New Project, it's going to pull up this screen. All of these are like Premiere Pro built-ins. They have sort of like sample footage that they can pull from. You can pick a variety of things. A lot of this right now I don't want to cover. I want to make sure you see two different locations. We want to cover this upper left area predominantly. So I always recommend naming your project. So for this, what I'm going to do is just say like Premiere Pro intro. Cool. If I name it that, I also want to make sure that I know where I'm saving my project to, because if you have to move it or if you have to go find it or whatever that may be the case, go ahead and pick a project location. This allows you to just save it to like your downloads or your desktop, or you can create your own little Premiere Pro folder. If you have a hard drive, you can save it onto the hard drive. But I recommend you click this drop down. You can choose a specific location, and it's going to pull up your file organizer, and you can pick a save location. So if I were to click this, this is where it's saving it currently, but I could say I just want to put it on my desktop. I could hit choose right here, and it's going to add it to my desktop. So let's do that. Why not? So if you notice that the location changes, so you see Premiere Pro and then desktop, I click create. And then if I were to minimize this and show you my desktop, you're actually going to see Premiere Pro intro right there. And it's a PROJ file. That means it's a project file. You're never going to be like submitting project files. Typically, what you're going to be doing is exporting and having the video be what you submit. So right now you're looking at a screen that you may or may not be looking at. If it's the first time you're opening up Premiere Pro on any device, typically it pulls you to the learning page. So the learning page almost always has a little tab on this right-hand side. If you want that to go away, you can just hit delete, or what I like to do is I like to go to Windows. So click Window up here at the top. You may not have the divot in the screen, so it could be somewhere else. But if you click on Window and you hover over Workspaces, you have a bunch of preset workspaces that will have different things in different locations. I recommend either doing editing or effects. So if you'll notice that if I click on Windows, I go to effects and click on that, you'll see it's got the little dot, pulls you up here. What's nice about effects is it lays out a lot of the things that we will need access to throughout this course. You're going to have your effects folder, which we'll cover in a different video. And you have access to effect controls, which is really, really big in Premiere Pro. On this left-hand side, it might be clicked on something else like source no clip, which is your preview, and we'll cover that soon. But effect controls right up here is going to be a really big use. So you'll notice we have sort of 4 different sections beside this sidebar. We have this, which is your program area. It's where you would watch what's actually on your timeline. We have this tab, which, like I said, we're going to cover effect controls predominantly up here. You also have the ability to preview footage that you've imported. And then down here, I can click in between my little modules and move stuff. We have access to our project folder. This would be all of your media, which is not in there. And then media browser, which is all of the like folders that are currently on your computer. There's a couple different ways to import footage or import media or pictures or audios or anything into your project. You could click import media if you'd like to import that way. That's one way. To me, the easiest way to import media is by clicking on your Finder or your File Explorer, whatever it is. For Mac, it's going to be your Finder. It's the face in the bottom left-hand corner. For Windows, it's your File Explorer. I like to come here, and this is typically where I like to import my footage from. So if I were to import this sitting in the forest footage, along with some other pieces of content, I can click and highlight it all. I can highlight a bunch of stuff by holding Shift and then clicking on it. So see how I keep clicking and it keeps highlighting. If I were to just click without holding Shift, my hand's up here, it just highlights one. But if I were to hold Shift while I'm clicking, it allows me to select a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to select a bunch of stuff. We're going to drag all of this into my bottom left-hand corner. This is my media area. This is my project folder where I can drop all of this stuff in. And as you can see, I have all that content now imported. Now, if I were to want to create a timeline, also known as creating a sequence from any of this content, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can just drag your first piece of footage in, and it creates a sequence based off of that piece of footage. You'll even see that it's named. See how I hover this and it says sequence, but if I come up here and I hover this, it says video. You'll see that it's named after the piece of footage. So this piece of footage called In a Subway, it named my sequence In a Subway. I like to click that and name it to something else. It helps me keep track of what's a sequence. You see how it even changes the name here after I change the name on the left-hand side. It keeps it organized for me. If I were to, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. If I were to want to not start with a piece of footage, what you can do is you can click File, click on New, and then just hover over Sequence. A little pro tip that I like to use for everybody is if you are creating something new, it will almost always be in File New. So if you need black bars, if you need a transparent video, if you need an adjustment layer, anything like that, and these are things we're going to cover much later, you would do File New, and you'll probably find it here. So if I were to click File New, it's going to pull up this. We don't really necessarily need to know what these things are. The main thing we want to focus on right now is the sequence name. So I'm going to just name it Edit for now. I'm going to hit OK. You'll notice that it's now created a blank timeline. There's no footage in it. So if I were to now grab my footage and drop it in, this is super important. You're going to get a thing sometimes if you have an existing sequence or existing timeline where nothing else is in it. It'll ask when you're importing footage, would you like to use the original sequence settings, or would you like to adjust your sequence settings to the footage that you're dropping in? In most cases, if you do not have really specific sequence settings you're working with, but you were just given footage or you just recorded footage, what you're probably going to want to do actually is click Change Sequence Settings to make sure that it fits the footage you're importing. If you have very specific specifications for the edit and all of your footage does not match that, like if you had to make a vertical video and all of your for Instagram or something like that, and all your footage was horizontal, you would do keep sequence settings and then adjust things accordingly to fit in that correct landscape. And we're going to cover all of that a different time. But for now, we're going to do change sequence settings, and it's going to make sure that my footage and my sequence all line up to have the same exact settings. So if I were to press play right now, you're not going to hear anything because this is a silenced video, but you do see the people in the background moving around. What I can do as well, this is what we call our playhead. So I can move it forward, move it backwards, and this is looking forward in the video, this is looking backwards in the video. These bars right here too, I can use to click in the middle of it and look further down my timeline. I can also look up if I have different layers, like lots of videos stacked on top of each other. These bars also allow you to zoom in and zoom out, making things really small or really big. This, if you look close, I'm now this is 4 seconds, and this is half of 4 seconds, and so on. This allows you to get really specific in your cuts. So if you had to cut a very specific frame or very specific moment, you could zoom in and make sure you're really doing that. You can also use the arrow keys. If I click the arrow key, this is clicking left one time. That goes one frame at a time. If I click right, this goes one frame at a time going right. So you can use the arrow keys as well to get really, really specific. Cool, so these are the sections we really need to cover. The section we need to cover is your sequence area, which is your timeline, your main timeline. This is where you would like drag and drop and put all of your different files in different locations, and like I can just keep adding stuff to this and make it more convoluted and have a bunch of stuff going on and I will say my warning to you when you're putting things into the timeline is be aware. So if I were to move this footage away really quick, let me delete the extra audios, move this footage here, and if I just hit play, you'll see that my video goes as normal, which is cool. If I were to move this on top of, meaning it's above, not overlapping, but it's above. So you'll see how this is one layer, it's on V1, this is V2. If I were to press play, so now you hear the dog barking that I added because my playhead was on it. It then cuts to this footage of the forest. If I were to move this down and overlap it, you'll notice that like if I ended up having to move it later, when I move it, it has deleted the in the subway video. Because let me go backwards. See how the in the subway video comes all the way to about 2 minutes. If I were to move this down, it overlaps that and cuts it off. So that's an important thing to be aware of. Just be careful when it comes to editing because you don't want to destroy anything. Cool. So a couple of the sections I want to cover. We already covered this bottom left pretty well. This is where your files are. If I were to double click on a file right here, it allows you to preview it. So this is double clicking on the city and the forest video, and you'll notice it pops up in my source tab. My source tab allows me to look at footage before I import it. This is nice because later I can show you a trick to importing like only a section of it, where basically you can select an in and out point using I and O, and then now I've only imported a part of that video. And we can cover that in more detail later. I'm sort of just rushing, but to see the difference, it's part of the video versus all of the video, which I've just now put in. Cool. But this is the source tab. The other tab here that I really want to focus on is the effect controls tab. You'll notice right now it's blank, and it's blank because I have selected nothing in the timeline for it to think about. If I do select something, if I were to click my video specifically, you're going to notice that a bunch of effects immediately populate because videos and audios are going to naturally have some effects built into them. Those effects typically being like motion, which is the location of the video on the screen, and opacity, which is how see-through that video is. Speed is also a factor, but these are all naturally built in effects in the same way where if I were to add this dog barking audio back in, and if I were to click on the audio, see how I've highlighted it now, it changes the effects because now I'm clicked on the audio, and you'll notice that it has some built-in effects like volume, channel volume, and if I do drop down on channel volume, you'll see right and left. Sometimes there's even like a panner built in. The version that you may be looking at, there's a chance that it says panner. In that case, instead of having like left and right having different decibel volumes, remember decibels are the way we measure sound. So higher decibels, louder sound, softer decibels, or negative decibels, quieter sound. For us, what I'm looking at here, I can turn up my left, say I put it to 7.8 dB. My left decibels, my left channel is going to be much more louder, so it's going to sound like it's coming from the left side. And if I were to turn the right all the way down, basically to like negative infinity or negative 281, that's silent. We wouldn't be able to hear it at all. Everything would sound like it's coming out of the left-hand speaker. Actually, you should be able to adjust the panning there. You'll notice that if you look at the audio as well, you'll see left, and this is all the stuff that the left-hand side recorded. You'll see right. This is all the stuff that the right side recorded. Actually, what's fun about this is I can tell, based off of this audio, that the dog in the video, based off of like what the waveforms look like, see, this is a bark right here. It's about to happen. Ready? Bark. I can tell that the dog was probably on the right-hand side of the camera because the dog spikes a little higher on the right channel. Fun little fact. Cool. Like I said, the things you need to take away from this video, as it is a bit long. This is your timeline where you watch the videos. This is where your files are stored. This is where you can either watch the preview clips in your media browser or your effect controls, which is really big. And this is where you would watch your timeline. If your screen does not look like this, last important thing, if you're freaking out, or let's say I click right here and I move things around, or I get rid of something, or my screen looks, oh my God, it's so jumbled. What happened? If your screen is jumbled and you feel like you've lost whatever like section you're looking for, this is because Premiere Pro is what we call modular, where each little tab is actually its own module. It's its own section that's dedicated to a very specific purpose. This allows you to have like any general setup that you'd like to. So if I were to click on workspaces, let's say I'm working on color for some reason in my project. If I were to click on color, it's going to pull up things where it's got all of my color adjustments. It's going to show me my lumetri scope, so what kind of colors are within this video and like the color distributions, all that. If I were to click on window and go back to learning, it's going to pull up the learning tab again. One thing that's important to remember is, so now I'm back to effects, which is all still messed up. If I were to go to window, click on workspaces, if I've messed something up, the one thing you can do is always just click reset to saved layout, and it's going to pull this back to where it's supposed to be. So I have my effects tab all built out the way I like it, again, which should be, like we said, timeline, media browser, effect controls, this, and then my effects tabs over here, which we will cover more in a different video. This should cover sort of like a general tour. If you were happy with your project and you wanted to export it, make sure you click on your timeline. See how it's highlighted blue now? If I'm clicked here, it won't work. If I'm clicked here, it won't work. If I'm clicked here, it won't work. If we're trying to export, you click on your timeline. You're going to go File, all the way down to Export, click Media. Once you've done that, make sure you double check the file name and pick a save location. Make sure you click this blue name, because if you bury it in like the Adobe folder in Premiere Pro in folder 22.0 or whatever, if you don't know where that is, or if you get lost, you'll have to re-export. We don't have to do that. So if we click this and then just make sure it's saved to like your downloads or your desktop or something like that, it makes it much easier to find. For now, as we're all learning, just make sure that the format is H.264 and the preset is match source high bitrate. Once you're happy, you click export way down here. It's going to think, and then you should find that video in your saved location, named whatever you have it named right here. Cool. That's it. Thanks for listening.